Hi, and welcome to The Bridge. Thanks so much for tuning in. We are a Markham Community Church located in the Greater Toronto Area with a passion for helping you engage in an authentic, life-giving community. We would love to connect with you further. Please take a moment and check out our website, where you can find more information about our ministry. Well, we hope you're blessed by today's message.
We're going to continue on with this series on influence, and the question that we've been asking related to this whole idea of influence is, are you influencing culture, or is culture influencing you? And of course, both are true. The question becomes, how is the culture influencing you? And then vice versa, how are you influencing the culture? And so what we've done is we've put together a number of isms. And an ism is a way of being. It's a set of attitudes. It's an approach to life. And so we've been going through a number of isms: racism, atheism, narcissism is the latest. Pastor Karen brought us that message last week, a great message. And so this week it's materialism, and it's a way of life, materialism, and it's materialism at its core, at its essence, is approaching life as if things were the meaning of life. That's, in a nutshell, what materialism is. A guy by the name of Matt Walsh casts a really harsh light on even the frenzy that is about to come upon us, each and every one of us, as we're approaching Christmas. And Christmas is that season, sort of epitomizes the idea of materialism, and he talks about it. He says, our entire economic system is to buy things. Everybody buy. It doesn't matter what you buy, just buy. It doesn't matter if you don't have the money, just buy. Our entire civilization now rests on the assumption that no matter what else happens, we will all continue to buy lots and lots of things. Buy, and then buy a little bit more. Don't create, don't produce, don't discover, just buy. Never save, never invest, never cut back, just buy. Buy what you don't need with money that you don't have. Buy like you breathe, only more frequently. This was his commentary on our society today. And to some extent, I think most of us participate in a consumer culture, and we value material possessions to one degree or another, and that's perfectly fine. But in excess, materialism can take a toll on our well-being, on our health, and it affects our relationships, and it affects the quality of life that we live. So what are the signs of materialism in our lives? What are the signs of materialism in our lives? Just a little diagnosis to start here. Well, first of all, you know that there are some elements of materialism in your life when your life is characterized by anxiety. Anxiety. Anxiety can come through irresponsible purchases. Purchases that are not necessarily connected to a true need, right? Or a real estimation of what you can afford. Anxiety can come into our lives this way. It could also mean that you're unwilling to trust God regarding the future as it would relate to material things. So Matthew 6 is a chapter in the Bible where Jesus is speaking to a whole bunch of people sort of sitting on the side of a hill. And the last half of this teaching that Jesus is giving is related to material things and the issue of anxiety. Yeah, he uses the word worry and or anxiety like some 6 times in this small little teaching in the last half of Matthew chapter 6. And he teaches that we are called to be concerned about something other than material things. That he'll care for the material part of your life if you will care for the spiritual part of your life. And he says, seek first God's kingdom and his righteousness, and all these other things will care for themselves. So the first thing that we can see in our lives if we are tending towards materialism is an anxiety around things. The second thing that we can see is covetousness. Now there's an old word, covetousness. To covet something is to want it. And covetousness usually refers to the idea of looking at someone else's life. It's looking at someone else's life and coveting. And you want what somebody else has. You want what is new. You want what is novel. I've joked with you about being at Costco and filling my cart with a few items and making my way. And I remember, it happens so often. You'll be walking along and people will be peering over into your cart. It happens a lot. And I'm thinking, what are they looking at? But what they're looking at, and I do the same thing, is, have I missed out on anything? What's he got in his cart that I've missed out in? How many times have I stood in line and someone's looking into my cart and says, where did you get that? It's true, isn't it? It's true. We look over into other people's lives and we want what they have. Now, thirdly, you could say that another facet of this materialistic attitude, another symptom, is selfishness. And Pastor Karen so aptly brought to us a message on narcissism, which is an extreme form of selfism. She brought to us that last week. You get much more satisfaction as a person in holding on rather than letting go. If you're a person who has a tendency to hold on rather than to freely let go, then materialism might have made its way into your heart. In selfism, you're not willing to give because it's not in your heart to give, or you're not willing to give because you fear being without, which means you're not trusting God to care for your future. Now, there's a fourth indication, and that is we become preoccupied. The word preoccupation comes to mind. We sort of know that we've entered into a lifestyle of materialism when we are preoccupied with things. And the word preoccupy, it literally means you are distracted away from the things that really count and really matter. Preoccupation with money or things means that you're thinking materialistically, constantly worrying about your investments, constantly worrying about rates of return. You put your money wondering if something better or something greater is going to be coming along, and you're sort of preoccupied around this issue of money. Preoccupation with getting as quickly as possible as much money so that you can meet the voracious appetite that is yours. There's a fifth symptom. Another symptom here is, in this little diagnosis of materialism, is discontentedness. Discontentedness. You begin to lose appreciation for what it is that you do have. And you focus on what it is that you don't have. Nothing you have is enough, whatever. Whether it's a commodity or whether it's an account or even sometimes we look and objectify the very people that are in our lives, and we see them as something that can be exchanged. And so we're seduced by what we do not have rather than being content with what we do have. Now, Lawrence James, he wrote a book, The Hunger for More, Searching for Values in an Age of Greed. And it's not a Christian book, by the way. It was a New York Times bestseller in its day. And on the cover it says, more. If there's a single word that summarizes North America and their hopes and or their obsession, that's it. More. More money, more success, more luxuries, more gizmos. And we live for more, for our next raise, for our next house. And the things we already have, however wonderful they are, then pale in comparison with what we might think we might still yet gain. And the hunger for more characterizes the North American frontier from its beginnings, and that appetite has become a shared addiction. It's become a part of our culture. Success and standing has lost all reference to accomplishment and is now described solely in terms of what you have. What you have. In Matthew 6, again, Jesus speaks to this issue, and he makes this statement. He says, don't store up treasures on earth where moths and rust destroys them, and where thieves can break in and steal. Store your treasures in heaven, where moths and rust cannot destroy, and where thieves cannot break in and steal. Wherever your treasure is, there you will find the desires of your heart as well. There's one more indication that you might be involved in materialism, and I want to give it to you. I'm just going to throw it in here. It's a big one. It's called idolatry. Again, one of those words that you don't often hear in this day and age. But idolatry is this idea that comes to us through God's word. And what it speaks to is you and I giving ourselves to something of low value and leaving behind that which is of supreme value. Okay? That's what idolatry is. It's loving things more than loving God or people. That's the essence of idolatry. Loving God and loving others is truly what life is about. Now, let that just sit in your heart for just a moment and in your mind. Loving God and loving others is the essence of life. It's the meaning of life. It's the reason. It's the legitimization of our existence. Loving God and loving others. It was Jesus who said, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind. This is the greatest commandment. And a second is equally important. You love your neighbor as yourself. The entire law and the demands of the prophets are based on these two commandments. So Jesus is saying, look, here's the deal. This is what life is all about. It's the reason God created you. You're created to love. Two key relationships, God and humanity. This is the meaning of life. And idolatry is forsaking that meaning and life's mission to love. And it's giving yourself over to a cheap replacement. Jesus would say that life is, at its core, about loving God and loving others. Now, materialism says that life is about stuff, right? That's what materialism says. It says life is about stuff, and stuff replaces God. That's materialism. And here in this part of the world, there's a desire to be better off than the people who are around us. And we think that stuff is what we grade ourselves by. There's a modern word that describes what we do with our stuff, by the way. It's called flaunting. Flaunting. And materialism has as part of its character the action of flaunting, right? Materialism has as part of its character the action of flaunting, and flaunting is using stuff for gaining personal esteem and for producing envy in the eyes of others. That's what flaunting is. And some people will spend money even though it alienates them from their spouses, from their families, from their close friends, and they don't care. They've made life about stuff. And there's usually a lot of pride attached to that stuff. And so you see, materialism isn't what it is that you have. It's not about an amount either, by the way. It's the value that you place on the things that you have. And it's the meaning that you give to those things. It's about a hard attitude that affects your approach to life and affects your relationship. So there's a huge problem with materialism being our approach to life. And we're all, to one degree or another, like all of these isms, given over to this way of life. All of us. King Solomon wisely said, humans' desires are like the world of the dead. There is always room for more. In our humanity, we have this insatiable need to somehow meet that need, but we can't. In an unregenerated heart, we cannot meet that need. What is an unregenerated heart? An unregenerated heart is a heart that is disconnected from the truest meaning of life, who is God. An unregenerated heart is a heart that lives in darkness, that is bought into some of the isms in a almost wholesale way, trying to make meaning of this life. And what the Bridge espouses and what the Bible espouses is that there is light that comes into your darkness when you give yourself over to God and His purposes for your life. When you begin to relate to literally the material world from a God point of view. And this is when you begin to be set free. It's a beautiful thing. Why do we always want more, by the way? I'm going to give you 3 reasons as to why we always seem to want more. First, we want more because having more things we think will make us happy. Or having more things will make us feel important. Or having more things will make us feel more secure. Let's investigate those 3 things. Number 1, having more things will make us happier. So much of our life is media-driven. And in order for the media to maintain its sustainability, they must convince you and I that life would be better if we had more. Right? And that's something more is a product or an item or an experience. And there are multitudes of companies who have products that they want to draw your attention to. So they pay the media to shop their wares, their products. And the media needs the money from the companies for their own sustainability. The companies need the media to put their product in front of you in such a way that you are convinced that you can no longer be happy with what it is that you presently have. So there is a discontentment that comes into your heart. And out of this new and artificially created sense of need, you buy. You buy. You beg, you borrow, and maybe even you steal to have what you become convinced that you can no longer live without. Your happiness is at stake. And it all starts with a strategic attack on your mind. That's where it all starts. On your senses. And the fact is, things can bring happiness. It's true. But the problem is that happiness is temporary. Temporary at best. It just lasts for a little while. If you get a gift, of course you're happy about it. But hopefully you're happy about the meaning and the relationship behind the expression that is in a gift form. I wonder for just a moment here, how many here remember what you got for Christmas last year? How many of you actually can remember what you got? Yeah, awesome. Way to go for those of you who can remember, right? Andy Rooney said this, having enough is nowhere near as much fun as I thought it was going to be when I didn't have any. Great quote. Let me take you to the second thing that we think about money or about materialism. Having more things is going to make me feel important. We do believe this. This, too, is driven by the media. The misconception is that I am what I own. I am what I own, and that my value is determined by my valuables. And that if I have little, then I must be worth little. So since I want to be liked and respected and looked up to, I must continually be updating and upgrading what it is that I have. And the truth is, and you've heard this statement before, that we buy things we don't even need with money we don't have to impress people we don't like. It's true. We do this. It does not make any sense. So Jesus forewarns us, and he says this to us. He says, be on your guard against greed in any way, shape, or form. For a man's real life in no way depends on the number of their possessions. Isn't that a beautiful statement? A person's life in no way is measured by the number of possessions that they have. Don't confuse your net worth with your self-worth. So it says, be on guard. Continually evaluate yourself. Ask yourself the tough questions. Am I expecting more things to make me more happy? Am I expecting more things to make me feel more important? It says, be on guard. Continually be evaluating yourself. So a fellow by the name of Joshua Becker, and there is this new thing happening in North America, and I love it. It started years ago with the prophets and with the teachers and with the wisdom that comes from God, and we see it in the Bible, and it's called contentment. But today, the phrase that is out there is mindful minimalism. Do you like that? I kind of like it. Mindful minimalism. And mindful minimalism is learning to look at the material world not in terms of gaining your value, but just simply seeing it for tools that get you to a greater place, a more important place. And to be honest with you, when you read the Bible and you ask the question, you can ask a simple question. Read through the whole Bible asking this one question: God, how do you want me to relate to this material universe? Ask that question and then read through the Bible. How do you want me to relate to the material universe? And I'm telling you, God speaks to that over and over again. And he challenges us because he says, if you're not careful, if you're not on guard, it's going to be easy for you to think that the material universe, in all of its shapes and forms, is actually what life is all about. And he says, a person who really understands life knows that this material universe is simply a prop for a greater story being told. That's all it is. There's a greater story being told. And this Joshua Becker, he speaks to this issue of minimalism. And minimalism, he says, has changed me. What began as just a journey to own less stuff has changed the way that I view myself and the world around me in significant ways. One of the most significant changes is my reevaluation of how society defines success. Too often, those who make and spend and keep the most resources for themselves are labeled as the successful ones. What is true, though, is that many people will compromise greater and more worthwhile pursuits for the facade of temporal worldly success. Minimalism, something I ascribe to, he says, is a reorientation in life where a person moves away from the misbelief that things will make them better off and happy. It is mindfully living out what truly matters while guarding against being distracted or bound to things that don't matter at all. People matter. The world matters. Love matters. Healing matters. Hope matters. Creativity matters. Faith matters. Growth matters. There's a third thing that we tend to think that our things will help us towards, and that is a sense of security. If I could just achieve financial independence, if I could just get there, then I will feel secure. The fact is that the more you have, the more insecure you can feel because you worry about keeping the very things that you've gained. The more you have, the more time and energy it takes to maintain it. I remember my father-in-law, who had amassed a good fortune, and I remember him saying to me, one day we were walking out in the farm field, and I remember him saying, "Brian, I've spent 60 years of my life accumulating, and now I'm trying to figure out for what will be the last 20 years of my life, how to get rid of it in a meaningful way." How to get rid of it in a meaningful way. That was such a powerful comment to me related to the meaning of things. In Proverbs, Solomon said, "The rich man thinks of his wealth as an impregnable defense, a high wall of safety. What a dreamer," he says. Again, he says this, "Be wise enough not to wear yourself out trying to get rich. Your money can be gone in a flash." The truth is that real security can only be found when you place your security in something that can't be taken away from you. And honestly, there's only one thing that can't be taken away from you, and that is your personal relationship with the God who has created you. He's permanent. He's forever. He's eternal. And He knows who you are and the meaning of what should be your life. We tend to think that having more is going to make us more happy, make us feel more important, and make us feel more secure. But it doesn't work that way. There's some things that we can do in order to overcome this materialism. The first thing that we can do is that we can resist the temptation to compare ourselves to others. We do not dare classify, a text says, or compare ourselves. It is not wise. Paul said that in 1 Corinthians. Don't compare yourself. There is a lack of wisdom in that exercise. It's not smart to compare yourself to other people because God has made us all unique, and comparing inevitably leads us to coveting, and coveting undermines our contentedness. 1 Timothy says, when we long to be rich, we are prey to temptation. We get trapped into all sorts of foolish and dangerous ambitions, which eventually plunge us into ruin. So we need to resist comparing. Secondly, we need to rejoice for what it is that we already have. Be grateful for what you've got. It's better to be satisfied with what you have than to always be wanting something else. Solomon said that. It's also cheaper. In the GTA, in this place that we all live in, the desire to acquire is out of control. It's incredible. The desire to acquire is out of control. We're in this unreal world that we live in. And I think sometimes we just have to stop and we have to ask ourselves some really tough questions, right? We have to ask ourselves, will moving into a house of $1 million from a house of $500,000 truly make us that much better off and that much more of a meaningful life? Will it? Now, we've recently gone through the reverse of that, where the question has become moving from that $1 million house into a house that is $750,000 and banking the $250,000. Is that really going to make you happy? Is that really going to fulfill all that you need in life? My father-in-law had a saying, and I love this saying. He used to say, "Brian, when it comes to things, use it up, wear it out, make it do, or do without." That's a great phrase. Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, is what Paul said. G.K. Chesterton, he said this. He said, there's two ways to have enough in life. One, get more, or two, desire less. You can do either. If you desire less, you can be content without having to get more. You can get off track by always wanting more. There's one last thing that I want to remind you that we can do that can be a strategy for not entering into materialism. And this is refocusing on permanent values. Paul says in Colossians chapter 3, set your mind on things above, not on earthly things. Don't store up for yourselves treasures here on earth, Jesus said, where moth is eat and destroys them and thieves break in and steal. We're to have a mind and a heart that is set on things that are eternal. Look at life from God's viewpoint. Realize that all possessions are temporary. They may be helpful, but they also may be a distraction. Which are they? Are your material things helpful to a greater end, or are they a distraction? The exhortation to the material world with a heavenly perspective. A heavenly perspective sees everything on the outside as temporary and everything on the inside as forever. A person who lives with a heavenly perspective uses everything that is external or material for internal and for eternal ends. Let me conclude with a quote from Dr. James Dobson. He said, "I have concluded that the accumulation of wealth, even if I could achieve it, is an insufficient reason for living. When I reach the end of my days, a moment or two from now, I must look backwards on something more meaningful than the pursuit of houses and lands and machines and stocks and bonds. Nor is fame of any lasting benefit. I will consider my earthly existence to have been wasted unless I can recall a loving family, consistent investment in the lives of people, and an earnest attempt to serve God who made me." That is focusing on what is truly valuable. Let's pray. Let's talk to God.